Amélie Poulain was born in June 1974 to an ex-army doctor father, Raphael, and a schoolmistress mother, Amandine. Both parents have many things they dislike, but one common thing they like is taking out things to clean and putting them back, which can be seen quite often in their daily activities. Amélie is 6 years old. She has no physical contact with her father, let alone a hug. The only time she would feel her father's warm touch is during the monthly examination. The thrill of the rare contact would make Amélie's heart beat loud like drums, as a result of which, Raphael thinks she has a heart defect. As a result of the misdiagnosis, she is declared unfit to go to school and is home-taught by her mother. Deprived of any playmates and tossed between a neurotic mother and an ice-cold father, Amélie has resorted to her vivid imagination. Amélie has one other friend at home, a goldfish. But the home environment has made the fish want to take its life, so it would often jump out of its bowl, making Amélie scream endlessly. The goldfish's behavior is destroying Amandine's nerves, so they decide to free it in a nearby stream. To comfort Amélie after her beloved friend is gone, Amandine gives her an Instamatic camera. She's busy clicking pictures outside her home when two cars ram into each other. A neighbor tricks Amélie into thinking that her camera caused the accident. Amélie is petrified. She thinks about all the world disasters shown on the TV that happened that afternoon, and how her camera was the cause of them. She was clicking pictures the entire afternoon, after all. After 2 days, she realizes the neighbor tricked her, and she takes her sweet revenge. A crucial football match is broadcasted live. She pulls out the cable every time his favorite team is going to score a goal, making him irritated to the extent he almost smashes his TV. One day Amélie is with her mother visiting Notre Dame to Paris. A Canadian tourist lands on Amélie's mother. After her mother's passing, Amélie's father becomes even more reclusive and obsessed with building shrines for his deceased wife. Years pass and Amélie waits till she gets old enough to leave. When she turns 18, she leaves her home and starts working as a waitress at the Two Windmills, Montmartre. Every person who works or visits the place is eccentric in one way or the other. Amélie is a simple girl who notices things people usually overlook. She is still single but doesn't have a qualm about it, as she finds pleasure in simple things like dipping her hand in a sack of grain, cracking the creme brulee, and skimming stones on the Canal Saint-Martin. Amélie frequently observes her neighbor, Mr. Dufayel, who people call Glass Man. He was born with brittle bones, because of which he stayed indoors for 20 years. On the night of August 30th, 1997, an event changed her life forever. Upon hearing the news about Princess Diana, Princess of Wales passing, Amélie is startled and drops the plastic perfume stopper. It rolls to one corner of the room and dislodges one of the wall tiles. Amélie removes the tile to reveal a hidden chamber with a metal box inside. She opens it and finds a young man's picture with a football. A wide smile appears on her face as she can barely contain her excitement on finding this treasure. The box was hidden by a boy who used to reside in her apartment 40 years ago. Amélie is struck with the idea of finding the owner of the box and returning his treasure. She makes a promise to herself that if the man is touched by her gesture, she will dedicate her life to bringing happiness to others. The next day she is on her mission to find information about the boy who lived there in the 1950s. She talks to her neighbors, inquiring about the boy who lived there. One of the vegetable shop owners who also owns the building she resides in asks her to meet his mom, as he was too young to remember anything. Lucien works in the vegetable shop. Rude Collignon often mistreats him. Amélie likes Lucien. He's no genius, but she likes the way he handles each endive like a precious object. Amélie then goes to meet Mr. and Mrs. Collignon. Mr. Collignon tells her the boy's name was Bredotau. Amélie bumps into Nino, a quirky young man who likes collecting discarded photographs of strangers from the photo booths at the metro station. She finds him attractive. Engulfed by the sudden surge of emotions, she briskly makes her way out, leaving him be. Back home, her father has hauled out a garden gnome that her mother hated. But now that she's no more, he thinks it would be a good idea to bring it out and place it in their garden. Now that Amélie has found a surname, she looks up the telephone directory and finds many men named Dominique Bredotau. She takes an early leave from the cafe to visit all the Dominiques, but she can't find the rightful owner of the box. Dejected, she heads back to her apartment. While climbing the stairs, Mr. Dufayel meets her and tells her it's Bredotau, not Bredotau. He invites her into his apartment. Everything in his apartment is wrapped in cushions, so he doesn't injure himself. He shows her many copies of Renoir's Luncheon of the Boating Party that he's painted for 20 years. He feels every character in the painting change their mood a little whenever he turns his back. He shares how he can't capture the girl standing in the middle of the painting, drinking a glass of water. Coincidentally, Amélie also stands there with a glass of water. Mr. Dufayel insinuates how the character in the painting and Amélie are similar. He gives her Dominique Bredotau's address. Dominique visits the market every morning, but that day Amélie tricks Dominique into entering the phone booth by calling it from the nearby booth. Dominique steps inside the booth and finds the box. At first, he thinks nothing of it until he opens it and finds a photograph and many other things. In a flash, all the memories come back to him, and he cries tears of joy. Overwhelmed by his emotions, he goes to a nearby bar where Amélie is also drinking. She hears him call it a miracle of his guardian angel. He starts talking to Amelie, sharing he has an estranged daughter her age. She has a son. He wishes to reconcile with his daughter and grandson before it is too late. He considers the box a miracle that has made him believe life is too short to hold resentment. Suddenly Amelie is filled with a strange warm feeling. It is more than being happy. The sense of contentment after helping a man has given her new hope, and she embarks on her new mission to help others. Amelie finds a blind man who is trying to cross the road. She helps and accompanies him to the metro station, along the way painting a picture of what is happening around him. After leaving the man there, she comes back home. She has just finished cooking food when she remembers Mr. Dufayle's words. He had called her lonely and without any friends. Amelie is irritated by the thought. She angrily munches on snacks and watches TV, where she imagines her death and how Paris will take it. She is called the godmother of the outcasts and Madonna of the unloved by the reporter. She cries as she realizes her dad has never truly lived his dream, and she isn't doing enough to persuade him to follow it. That night she visits her home and steals her father's gnome. But she is too late to return to her apartment as the metro station closes for the day. She spends the night at the station. The next day she finds Nino in his usual place, searching under the photo booth. She stops in front of him and stares at him. She realizes she has feelings for him by the sudden increased rate of her heartbeat. Nino looks at her, and something catches his eye, making him call out to a man behind her. But the man practically runs and takes off without stopping, even after Nino calls after him several times. Amelie is curious and follows him. When Nino takes off on his bike after the man he's chasing, one of his suitcases drops on the road, but Nino doesn't notice it. Amelie retrieves the suitcase and waits for him at the metro station. She discovers a photo album that has hundreds of photos that had been torn apart but were reassembled by Nino. At the cafe, Amelie decides to help Joseph, a patron, and Gina's ex. Gina is a waitress at the diner. Amelie talks to Joseph and tells him about another worker at the cafe, a hypochondriacal Georgette, that she has eyes for him, but he never notices. She does the same with Georgette and leaves the rest to play out. Amelie has become friends with Mr. Dufayle. She occasionally visits him in his apartment. Today she has bought Nino's photo album to show it to him. She is fascinated by one particular man's pictures which appear 12 times in the album. Each time the man took his photograph with an expressionless face, he tore it before discarding it. They theorize that man is probably scared of being forgotten by the world. So he takes his picture at every booth in Paris and discards it so people can remember him. Their conversation leads to the girl in the painting. Amelie projects herself on the girl and proposes that the girl might not be lonely, but distracted by a man she has recently bumped into and has built an affinity towards. Mr. Dufayle wants to know why the girl would imagine herself relating to someone who's absent, then build relationships with those around her. Amelie explains maybe the girl has to deal with other people's messy lives, but Mr. Dufayle is concerned about the mess in the girl's life, which she neglects because she's too focused on helping others. Amelie thinks it is better than helping a garden gnome, implying her father, who she can't persuade to follow his dreams and travel the world. Amelie is at the vegetable store when she sees Collignon mistreating Lucien, and decides to teach him a lesson. She manages to get the keys to his apartment and tweaks some of the things in his apartment. She then goes to meet her dad, who seems distracted. When she says she had 2 heart attacks and a miscarriage because she used illegal substances when she was pregnant, he does not react at all. She asks about the garden gnome. He shows her pictures of the gnome in front of all the famous places around the world. She smiles and says the gnome probably wanted to see the world. While returning from her dad's house, she finds flyers of a lost bag with a photo album stuck everywhere in the station. She takes one of the flyers with a number written on it but doesn't call. The next day, Collignon has had enough of things not going as usual. Finally, he gives up and sleeps in the shop while Lucien takes charge and efficiently does the work with no constant patronizing from Collignon. Georgette and Joseph start noticing each other, and soon, love blossoms between the two. Lucien brings Mr. Dufayle his daily necessities. He puts up an act and entertains Mr. Dufayle every time he comes. That day, along with the essentials, he gave him the package that Amelie had hidden under the footmat outside Mr. Dufayle's apartment. After Lucien leaves, Mr. Dufayle plays the tape, and it is the recording of all the shows. Since he hadn't stepped outside in 20 years, Amelie thought it would be nice for Mr. Dufayle to see the outside world. He didn't watch TV, because he had connected his TV with the video camera that recorded the watch outside his building. After getting motivated by Mr. Dufayle, Amelie goes to meet Nino. She is informed that he is working at the fun fair that day, so she goes to the fun fair and rides the most terrifying ride. She doesn't meet Nino but leaves a note asking him to meet her at the given address the next day. The next day, Nino comes to the place and is asked to follow the arrows, leading him to a binocular stand. From there, he sees Amelie returning his photo album in the suitcase attached to his bike. He rushes downstairs to meet her, but she hides. She has left a cryptic message in his photo album asking if he wants to meet her. Amelie's father gets more pictures of his gnome standing in front of well-known monuments, baffling him. Amelie has invented a way to help another neighbor, Madeleine, a concierge. She is always in a sour mood because her husband left her years ago. Amelie makes a letter after cutting lines from different letters she took from Madeleine's apartment. She makes it look old, and after it is ready, she posts it to Madeline under the pretense of the letter getting lost after a plane crash in 1962. The letter is made to sound like a final note from her husband, proof that he loved her before he passed away. Madeline finally gets closure. Amélie's flight attendant friend returns the gnome to her, after Amélie gave it to her to get its picture clicked in famous places, and send it to her father's address. Raphael realizes he could have done better. Nino goes around the town looking for his mysterious girl. He finally finds her picture that she took that was addressed to 2 Windmills Cafe. On the stipulated day, Nino is late. It is already 4:10 p.m. All sorts of crazy scenarios run through Amélie's head as a possible explanation for Nino being late. Scenarios like Nino being taken hostage, getting into a car crash, losing his memory, being shipped to Istanbul, surviving a landmine, and taking to the hills. She refuses to feel sorry for the guy who has to eat borscht all his life in a hat. Her imagination runs amok. Nino finally arrives and puts a stop to her frenzy. He asks Amélie if the masked girl in the photograph is her. She denies it, but he can tell. She writes a message on a piece of paper and asks Gina to put it inside his pocket. Gina does as asked, and Joseph sees her slipping the note into Nino's jacket. He scoffs and misunderstands the situation. He thinks Gina is interested in the young customer. Amélie and Mr. Dufayel discuss Amélie's love story through the painting's character. Mr. Dufayel calls the girl in the painting a coward for not facing reality and wishing to keep living in a dream. Amélie decides to face reality and goes to the photo booth at the station. She jams the photo booth and calls for repair. Nino gets Amélie's note and arrives at the booth. He waits for the person inside the booth and realizes there is something familiar about the person inside. And there it is, a familiar face that he has assembled 12 times. The man is not a ghost or man wanting to be remembered, but a repairman who clicked his pictures for the test run. Amélie stumbled upon the revelation a few days back, and thought it would be great if Nino saw the guy whose picture was featured the most times in his album. That day too, she couldn't bring herself to approach Nino. Nino is back at the cafe and asks for the girl who wrote him the note. Gina tells him she's gone to her father's place and will be back soon. Amélie has placed the gnome in her father's garden. Joseph has started making Georgette uncomfortable by spying on her daily. Having had enough, she yells at him and leaves early. Joseph is thick-skulled and has his own faulty notion of impressing women, and he abides by it. Amélie is back in the cafe, and Joseph misleads her with the misinformation, and tells her that Gina and Nino left together, insinuating there is something going on between the two. Amélie thinks she has lost Nino forever. Gina meets Nino after her shift. She is concerned about Amélie's well-being because she likes Nino, which is not a good thing, as the men she tends to like are mentally unsound. But he passes her proverb test. A heartbroken Amélie comes back home. She tries to bake a cake but is out of yeast. She imagines Nino bringing the yeast for her and surprising her from behind the beaded curtain. She gets startled when the beaded curtain sways. She turns to see if he really came, but it is her cat. Amélie cries at her first heartbreak. Suddenly her doorbell rings. It is Nino, but she doesn't open the door. He leaves a message on the paper and slides it from under her door, saying he'll be back. She gets a call from Mr. Dufayel, who asks her to go to her bedroom. He has recorded a message and sent Lucien to set it up for him. Mr. Dufayel encourages her to take a chance because if she doesn't, her heart will become brittle like his bones. Amélie is about to leave her house to go after Nino, but he is already at her door. At last, they meet, and Amélie takes him inside. She kisses him all over his face and asks him to do the same. They spend a romantic night together. In the morning, she smiles at the happiness she is experiencing. The woman who did things to make others happy finally got the happiness of her own. Dominique is reunited with his daughter and grandson. Mr. Dufayel paints a different painting for the first time in 20 years. Amélie's father packs his bags to travel the world. Meanwhile, Amélie is happy with her blossoming relationship with Nino.